oh, great. Another doctor who wants to invest in real estate. Sure. And then, I'm sure he was thinking the same thing. Oh, great. Another realtor who doesn't know shit about investing. The harder lead or like list is to find, the better, because that means no one else has it.
That's true.
You're only sending to people who need to sell. So then when your team is taking those calls, they're like, this is great. Like, everyone who's calling in needs to sell. They want to sell. They're happy to talk to me. The house was inherited, pre-foreclosure, vacant, and failed listing. Do you think that person's going to sell soon? Yeah, exactly. They've already tried and failed.
All right, Spencer, we're going to push this out to be aired in 4 to 6 weeks, so I can jump on this before anybody else in this market hears about it.
Actually, we're just going to delete that whole part.
Right. That's right. We're just going to say Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Spencer Sutton, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Adam Hobson. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Spencer. Good to be here.
All right. Well, we're excited today because we've got a fantastic guest who's going to bring a lot of real estate wisdom to us today. I met Josh Axe at the Investor Fuel Mastermind we had in San Diego just a few weeks ago, and we kind of had this bond. He had kind of gotten into the business through property management. I had gotten into it through wholesaling and flipping. We flip places. I'm in property management now. He's an accomplished flipper based out of Phoenix, but actually does most of his work in Pennsylvania. So, Josh, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're excited. So let's dive right in. I would love to hear just your origin story because, of course, you have a little bit of property management in your background, and you got real smart and got out of that business. But would love to hear just kind of what got you into real estate in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably started when I was like 3 or 4. My grandpa had become a broker like in his 50s after he retired, and he had some rentals and managed for a couple other people. And so he'd take me on like showing appointments and stuff when I was like 3 or 4 years old. So I've kind of like had it in my blood, but it was always like maybe later I'll get into it, like that's a later on kind of thing. And then I moved to Phoenix in 2012 and was working for an addiction recovery program. And then I got engaged and I'm like, all right, well, I need to make more money. So someone who was on the board, their son-in-law owned a property management business. And so got connected over there, and they took really good care of me and kind of showed me the ropes, taught me some things. And, I think at the time they had 600, units under management, and I helped them get, over 1,000. And then after that, they kind of just took off. But the comp plan changed, and when I was in the business, I was like, geez, like I was the owner agent, so I'd go and I'd meet with the investor, and this is like 2014 at this point, maybe 2015, and you have the conversations back then where it's like, well, I can't sell my house because I owe too much on it still from the crash. I'm not going to make any money, but I need to move. I just moved into this new house, but my mortgage, is, all in with all of our costs, it's like $800. Like, do you know what we could get for rent? And so I'd go and I'd run the numbers, and it'd be like, oh, you could get $1,400 a month for rent. And I'm like, well, our fees are only like $100 a month. They're going to make $400 a month in cash flow, and we're doing all the work. Like, damn, how do I get some rentals? So that was kind of the genesis of like, I need to figure that out. And so I started, Googling how do you buy rental properties, and found BiggerPockets. And so just started that like learning process where I was trying to learn as much as I could about real estate. And then the comp plan changed at that brokerage. So then I switched to a different one who wasn't doing the same advertising. Like, everything kind of changed. and
meaning there weren't many opportunities for you at that
there weren't as many. We didn't have as many leads coming in for property management business, and so I was trying to help them get that, but I was so new in the advertising, lead gen space that I didn't know anything really. Like I knew they were running pay-per-click ads, but that was the gist of it. And so I don't know how to run pay-per-click ads. The brokerage I moved to didn't know how to do that. So the lead flow was completely different. So I'm getting creative, like I'm cold calling people. I'm asking title companies for lists and stuff. And then one of my cousins who lives here in Phoenix needed to sell a house. And he's like, do you know how to sell a house? I'm like, I'll figure it out. Like other people can do it. I'm sure I could figure it out. So we had a deal where it was like, I'll list his house at 1% for 30 days. If I can't get it sold, then he could cancel and move on. Anyways, got it under contract, found him another house. So we closed both of them. And I think I made like $7 or $8 grand in one day because we closed both. And I was just like, holy hell, like this is amazing. How do I do this? Like
I want $7,000 every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, how do I do that more? And so the property management company I had moved to, like they didn't have anyone who was selling properties. So I kind of like positioned myself as like the sales expert in the company. And so then a property manager walked down the hall one day. He's like, you know how to sell a property, right? I'm like, yeah. And so he's like, all right, I'm going to have this owner call you. And so then I just started like once a month sending like do you know what your house is worth email? Because I figured, and I explained to the broker, I'm like, they're going to sell the house regardless. It might as well be through us. And so we had a good split for him and for me where it was like 60-40 if it was within the brokerage. And then it was like 80-20 if it was outside of it. So, yeah, so it was good. Like that was kind of my learning experience. And then I'm like, well, how do I find leads that are not within the property management space? So I started like, YouTubing that, learning that. And he had one of those like Pitney Bowes, like mail.
The
where it would like add
stamper.
The postage. Yeah. So dude, I'd print out like 500 letters or postcards or whatever, and I would just run them through that thing. And he's like, why is our postage bill so high? I'm just running them through. And like, I'm like, well, we'll get some leads from it. But, like I didn't know how targeting worked or anything. So it ended up not being super great. And I ended up paying him back for the postage. But, it was like, those were the things that I learned. I did get some calls, but nothing really came of it. So
I think this is really interesting, though, just kind of your journey, because here you are, you're like, hey, property management, which it sounds like you were like a business development person for the property management company, but you learn a lot in property management about owning rentals. You're out meeting with these owners, seeing what they were doing and going, oh, this is really interesting. And then you kind of move to a sales agent, which we cranked up a brokerage a few years ago as well. And it's like, it's really interesting because the property management people didn't know much about selling, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's kind of like this progression. And then you go on to go, well, how do I find deals that aren't on MLS? How do I find deals before people, like, how do I find these motivated sellers? So it's really an incredible evolution kind of a real estate investor, which I think gives you a breadth of insight into how the whole thing works. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think the biggest takeaway was for you that's helped you in your career, maybe from your property management experience, maybe from that time with a property manager?
Yeah, I think I learned more at the first company because they were very, very well organized. They ran it like a business. They had systems in place. So I learned that, which I felt was very important. And I think the number one takeaway was like speed to lead. So like since I was the owner agent, I was the one who was like reaching out to owners who had submitted a form, or I think most of them were forms like through pay-per-click. So I kid you not, like someone would submit a form and I would call them within 30 seconds because I was waiting for the phone to ring if I had done my follow-ups. And then anytime that lead came through, I would prioritize that hot lead. So I'd call them within a minute of them submitting, and they were like, I just hit submit. Like, you're already calling me? Like, are you a real person? And I'm like, yeah, this is Josh. Like, and so they're like, wow, that was fast. I'm like, well, we pride ourselves on quick communication, because what do you have common in property management? Very slow to respond. Yep. So it was like the sales process was so much easier after that, because we hit them right away with that speed to lead. So that was kind of the number one takeaway. And then you hear all of the things that the other managers do wrong. And so then you give that feedback to ownership. And so it was a really good experience.
That's a great lesson. We talk about speed to lead around here a lot with our salespeople. Like, how fast are you getting back to these people? Because they may be calling 2 or 3 property management companies or filling out 2 or 3 forms. And
don't give them a chance.
Yeah, don't give them a chance. And you're right, because you're giving that first impression. We always say execution and communication are the 2 biggest things in our business. Yep. If we execute well, we don't have a lot of communication, but owners and residents want to be communicated with. So
for sure,
really, really important.
Even if it's just saying like, if you're just saying like, hey, I'm getting to this.
That's right. I'm figuring that I'm going to answer your question. I'll be back with you. Just. Yeah, 100%. People don't like to be left in the dark, and especially when they have a rental property halfway across the country and they're like not really sure what's happening.
Well, it's kind of the same way too, Josh, with because I know now you flip houses. When somebody calls in, I don't know what the stat is. It's like you call them back within 3 minutes, but it's amazing how many people, like if you're on a call or you can't get to it right away, they'll never answer the phone again. Like you have like this small, some people will if they're really motivated, but at the same time, I know I've heard of other investors get these calls and they'll say, well, how quick can you come look? Well, let's see, I'm busy this week and the next week I have something. Dude, 2 weeks in this business, 2 days, you're done. If somebody calls me today, I'm like, are you home tonight? Because I can come over and take a look maybe, quick as you can. But all that to say, speed to lead is huge,
Yeah, and I actually have a guy here in Phoenix who's a really good buddy of mine. When someone calls in, he's like, I'll spend 3 hours with them on the phone if I have to. Because as soon as I let them off the phone, if I don't get a contract signed or an appointment set for like that day or the next day, it's dead. Like I almost know it's dead. So like I'm going to spend as much time as I need to get a contract signed or a contract in their inbox so that they know I'm serious and they can stop looking. Because if they start looking elsewhere, it's, you just get lost.
Yep.
Well, if you divide the profit that you could potentially make on that deal by the 3 hours that you spend on the phone, that's nothing. Right?
No,
you're getting paid a lot.
Yeah, seriously.
So let's keep going with your story, because you got into sales. You're working at that second property manager, kind of sending some mailers out. You're in Phoenix. Like, how does this evolve into what you're doing today?
So I think one notable thing that happened in Phoenix was I started working with a guy who had probably 20 or 30 rentals that were managed by us. And a guy named Tony out of California, and he's like, I want to find something bigger. So I ended up finding I think it was a 32 unit property or 16 unit. It was a long time ago, so the numbers I forget, but I remember the commission check was $30,000 because I helped him buy this property. And looking back, like he syndicated the deal, and I didn't know anything about syndications or, even how to run the numbers on a building like that. But that like sparked my, wow, big deals, you can make way more money. So then my wife gets into physician assistant school in Pennsylvania. And so we moved to PA for her to go there. And I'm a licensed agent, so I go and I get licensed there. But what I realized is the median home price at the time was like $100,000. So you sell a house, you make $3,000, 3% commission. But then over there, things are kind of, 10 years, 15 years behind. So the brokers are getting 30 to 40% on stuff you generate. So it's like, I'm getting $2,100 plus I have all my own costs and I'm doing all the work. Like I wasn't making any money. And so I'm like, I got to figure something out. At the same time, my buddy, well, I met him there, but his wife was going to the same PA program as my wife. And we went to dinner one night. He was an anesthesiologist by trade. They had moved from Tucson, so kind of a
little match.
Similar area. We connected that way. And his name's Mike. So Mike is just a genuinely good dude. Like a lot of, if you're in real estate, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this, like how many times have you talked to doctors that are like, oh, I'd love to invest in real estate. Real estate sounds so awesome. Send me some deals. And you send them 1,000 deals that are the best deals ever. They never buy a single thing. So I'm like, oh, great. Another doctor who wants to invest in real estate. Sure. And then, I'm sure he was thinking the same thing. Oh, great. Another realtor who doesn't know shit about investing. Here we go. And so we ended up going to dinner and like he had 20 units or whatever. And he found out I knew a ton about property management. And so it was like, oh, we actually know some things. Like maybe there's a partnership we could work out. So our initial plan was to wholesale. And, I think we sent like one mailer and we're like, all right, this doesn't really work. We're both busy. And so then we're out walking our dogs one day, and in where we live in Pennsylvania, there's a levee. So there's a levee there, has a nice like walking trail, but there was this old building that looked like a motel kind of, but it was apartments and it was real run down. It's like the brown tan look of the 70s, like Parkway Manors, what it was called. So kind of run down. So we're like, let's send that guy a letter. Like we had the LLC already set up, like let's send him a letter, see what happens. So I literally go to detective mode. I find everyone in the county who has the same last name, and we send all of them a letter, every single one of them. We also find out like he owns it free and clear. One of the letters went to Mexico, and we're like, well, maybe. Turns out that was him. So his name's Greg. He was living in Mexico. He was an expat. So living out there, living like a king, making $5,000 or $6,000 a month. This building was a 35-unit apartment building. His manager was probably 75. She was an old, crusty old broker. The handyman who was like managing, the maintenance there, this guy named Chet, who's like 88, he would leave
this sounds
signs
like a
everywhere.
perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it was incredible. So like you have a out of country landlord, you have terrible management, like all the things that you're like, oh, this is perfect. So right off the bat, we're like, hey, do you want to do seller financing? No way. I don't want to do seller financing. I want to be done with this building. We also found out he was making, around $5,000 or $6,000 a month. So having learned through Bigger Pockets, this is 2017 at this point, having learned through Bigger Pockets and all the podcasts and YouTube, like I had learned everything you could learn about seller financing, negotiating, like all the tactics. And so I was like, well, let's keep on this seller financing thing, but we also know how to value apartments. So, based on the cap rate of this dilapidated, rundown building, it's worth like $800,000. Like we don't want to pay for an appraisal if, the appraisal is $5,000. If the appraisal comes back low, we're out $5,000. You're not going to sell it to us for $800,000. Like, why even do that? So then, and our initial price to him was like 1.35 million. So he's like, well, I talked to my accountant, I talked to my my lawyer, and he actually suggested there might be some tax benefits if I do seller financing. And we're like, what the hell? Like, we've been telling you this from the beginning. And so like had to come from someone outside of us, but it did, thankfully. So he actually proposed 99% seller financing.
Wow.
Because he's like, then I'll get the most tax benefits. And what we agreed on was like 3-year interest only, 5.5% interest. This is January of 2017, and it was 1.35. So we bought a 35 unit building with $13,500 down. He was First Deed of Trust. And so that was January. Right away, we get to work. So my business partner, Mike, had some money because he's a doctor. So he loaned our business, I think it was 30 grand or something, to start doing some of the remodels. So right away, we get all the tenants onto our lease. One thing that was super unique, when we did our inspection, all of the gas meters and electric meters were separated.
That's
so
perfect.
The county had required the previous owner to do that, but he was still paying all the bills. And we're like, what? This is crazy. So we switch we get them on our lease, tell them that they're now responsible for utilities. That bumped our cash flow $3 grand a month, $4 grand a month, the second month we owned it. It was wild. And so then we got everyone on leases. So instead of them paying $100 every week in cash, they were actually paying with a check or a cashier's check. So we kind of turned the building around, started using some of that cash flow to renovate the units, used some of Mike's money to do that. And then from there, we did an appraisal in September of 2017, so about 8 months later, and the building appraised for $2.58 million. So $1 million to lift in 8 months.
Wow,
what a great deal! And that right there sold you. You're like, what am I doing?
Hooked.
What am I
that
doing?
was my first deal. That was my first non-owner occupied, move out of your own house to make it a rental deal. And we'd only done one, we moved from Arizona to Pennsylvania, and that was our one rental. And so it was the experience that I had accumulated in property management and through self-learning, prepared me for that opportunity. So I always have to mention in that story, looks like luck, but that was a lot of knowledge meeting an opportunity. So it looks like luck, because there's 100 people that could have done the exact same thing that just didn't.
Yeah, so, no doubt. That was a ton of preparation got you ready for that. Seeing that deal, well, okay, how do we contact the person? Let's send this letter. Yeah. Your letter was probably a well-written letter. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah.
That's probably still your best deal to date, I would guess, even though it was your first one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can't. And then what's crazy is the seller had first right of refusal on any new financing. So he's like, well, how much do you guys want? And we're like, I don't know. We were thinking 400,000. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, guys, I don't have it. I only have 387. We're like, that's fine. So he wired us another 387,000, recorded a second mortgage. So we got the building for the 135. It appraised for that. We put down 13.5. That 385 covered what Mike had loaned us, our business. And then I got personally, I think 170,000 or so. And then that's when I was like, okay, well, I want to start flipping now. One thing that I don't think was ever impressed upon me until it happened was once you do get a significant amount of money, because to me that was a hugely significant amount of money that I'd never had before. It was I can't lose it now. Shit, what do I do? Mm-hmm. And so then I was like, well, how do I make this into more? And so I had been studying the direct mail and I had been learning a lot. And then I had bought a flip that was not going great prior to the refi. But I think I sold it and made $1,500. And I was like, well, that's a good learning experience, but wasn't good for making money. And so I was like, well, I can send more mail. And a guy from church had been connected to me because he's like, hey, this guy in our church He's going through some tough stuff. You're in real estate. Maybe you could help him. Well, it turns out he was delinquent tax, going to get foreclosed on by the county. And he only owed like $6,000 or $4,000 or some like nominal amount of money for what his house was worth. And he was just going to walk away. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, one, I wonder if I could help him. So I helped him like negotiate with the county for a like payment plan or whatever. And so he avoided the foreclosure. But I was like, I wonder if there's other people who fall into that same category. So that's what started my like, well, I wonder if I could get a copy of the delinquent tax list. And so that's, how that started. And, we do that. We do a bunch of other things now, but I have very long-winded answers. I'm sorry.
No. This is really fascinating. So that essentially kind of kicked off your like, hey, well, I wonder if I could, targeted marketing is really, really important when you're talking about, buying deals. And we used to do a lot of direct mail back in the day. I know that Adam does some now. Mm-hmm. I'd love to maybe dig into, because there's a lot of different, when we go to Investor Fuel Masterminds, we hear of a lot of different marketing strategies that people are using, right? I mean, you always hear, pay-per-click, you hear there's pay-per-lead, pay-per-click, there's TV ads, direct mail, cold callers, there's all kinds of things. Tell us what you found success in, and just and tell us a little bit about your market, because you're still buying there in Pennsylvania, even though you live now, you've moved back to Phoenix.
Yep. Yeah. So we're back in Phoenix. So, I mean, I kind of just kept doing what was working, like when I found out that you can get that list from the county. So I figured out that process, and like my first mailer, I think I made 100,000 off of like 2,500 pieces. So it cost me like, I don't know, $1,500, but I made $100,000. And part of the thing for me, like why I hadn't sent mail prior to that, was like, I didn't have the cash. So like, I always felt like it was disingenuous for someone to say like, hey, I'm a cash buyer, but they don't actually have the cash. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have hard money lenders. I think hard money lenders like was scary to me, like the word hard money. I was just like, oh, this is not,
it's going to be hard. Ideal. It's going to be hard to pay back.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I didn't understand the process really. So basically like I didn't send any mail. And once I had that cash, I started to, and that was the list I hit first, was like the delinquent tax. So kind of what it looks like now is like, I stack my lists with a bunch of different like stacking criteria. So I'll make sure they're like, I start with delinquent tax, I'll do pre-foreclosure, I'll do inherited homes, I'll do failed listings, which is a really good one, a vacant list. And then I'll upload all of those lists into PropStream. So a lot of times what happens, if you've ever gotten county data, they send it to you in whatever format they feel is easiest for them. So that could mean it's on a PDF that you can't extract the info. Mm-hmm. That could be, in a text file, whatever. So it's just really hard to use data. And so I realized that if I get all that data and I can extract the parcel number, you can import that list into PropStream. So when you import it into PropStream, now you have the data formatted in a way that's usable and uniform throughout all of your lists. So now all of a sudden my delinquent tax, my pre-foreclosure, my inherited list, my vacants, failed listings, all of them are formatted in the correct similar format. So then you can scrub and you can merge. So I'll get all those lists onto multiple spreadsheets in one file, and then I'll start merging them onto one file, but I'll add columns for every motivated criteria. So like if there's like, delinquent tax, pre-foreclosure, failed listing, whatever, they'll have a 1 in that column.
Which means like a one is like a high priority. Like this is a really motivated seller.
Yeah. Well, and how it works. So like I'll put all the numbers in those columns on each individual list, and then I'll merge all of the lists. So then anytime there's a duplicate, it'll have a 1 in multiple columns. So once you format the list that way, now all of a sudden they all have scores. So then like the reason that I have such good returns on direct mail is because if I'm feeling like, hey, I have a lighter budget this month, like I'm short on cash, I want to send to only properties that have a 4 or a 5 score, right? So now I may only send 3,000 or 4,000 pieces, but if I make 50 grand, 100 grand on those small mailers, like your return on investment is through the roof. And here's the thing that I mentioned is like, you're only sending to people who need to sell. So then when your team is taking those calls, they're like, this is great. Like everyone who's calling in needs to sell. They want to sell. They're happy to talk to me. Whereas like a pay-per-click lead, you call them, I didn't submit my info or whatever, it's like, yeah, you did. That's how I have your info. I can see your IP address. Like, come on.
That's why they say buyers are liars.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
Well, let me ask you.
That's kind of the process.
Well, and so I've done this in Birmingham. I don't know how big your market is in Pennsylvania, right? So
Tiny.
Ours in Birmingham, like if I get on, and I pull a list, put in Jefferson County, which is here in Birmingham, I may come up with 200,000 addresses. Well, then I'll niche it down to vacant. Okay, now maybe I've got 20,000. And then by the time my list stacks so much, I'll have like 150 properties. And as well as I do, if I have 150, best case scenario, we're getting in touch with half of them. Out of those half, you're going to, half of them are going to tell you to jump off a bridge, don't ever call me. And then you've got this little niche, thing. But also there's so many people doing it in this area. All that to say, do you have more than that? Like when you end with a list, and you don't have to get too specific if you don't want, how many are you, like, do you have 50? Do you have 100? Do you have 1,000? And kind of how many of those are you getting in touch with, or are you getting response from?
Yeah, and how big is your market that you're targeting? Because you're targeting a couple of counties in Pennsylvania.
We're 2 counties. I think the total population between both is like 500,000. So it's small. Like I'm in a very small county, but like the delinquent tax list in each of them, if you just look at that, is probably 5,000 to 6,000 in each county. So there's 10,000 there. So delinquent tax has been just a really good list for me. So my like strategy is like, well, if they have at least 2 to 3 motivators, I'm always going to mail them. So like, and then the other thing that I didn't mention is like when I extract those lists out of PropStream, I make sure they have at least 20% equity. And I do 20% because PropStream and every other valuation software out there is notoriously wrong. So, if even sometimes I'll go 10% because like there's properties that will be on the list that'll show it has no equity, and the equity is like it's got 50% equity. So I always make sure there's at least some equity in that. And then also like I'll skip trace some of those lists if I get return mail. So my lists on average are like 20 to 25,000 people.
That's after everything is stacked.
That's everything stacked.
Wow,
and that'll be
crazy.
Like two to 3 motivators on there.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So,
and that's inherited properties too, right? So like it depends on your list data. So like depends on where you're getting your data. I would ask where you're getting the lists and the data you're.
So we do some so like I use PropStream all the time, but like you said earlier, you can only go, your data is only as good as the county you're in. Jefferson County, Shelby, really a lot of counties around here, you hear people all the time talking about, well, there's you can go to the county and they'll give you a weed lien list or a, municipal lien list. They claim they don't have it, but as soon as one of my rentals the grass gets too high, they send me a list and it's got everybody else on there with it. So like if I let the grass get high at one of mine, I can get a list, but that's the only way I can get it. But probates, like you go to Jefferson County here, they say, other counties will say, other states, you hear Arizona, go down to the courthouse. They'll give you a PDF. They'll give you a thumb drive. You can pay for it. Here, they're like, the records department's downstairs. You can go look through all these books from years ago if you want, So Jefferson County data is not great. So that's a big issue we have. But there's no way by the time we list stacked, we would have 25,000 to call. There's hardly any way if we do just vacant or absentee, we would have that 25,000, So that's just nuts that you can niche it down that much and still have that many.
I'd be curious to try it. And actually, when you said it's really hard to get that data, my ears perk up.
Yeah.
I love when data is hard to get. And it's the same in my county. At one point, I had a virtual assistant scrubbing obituaries in the local newspapers, and he would search the county to see if that name owned property in my counties.
Yeah.
So the harder a lead or list is to find, the better, because that means no one else has it.
That's true.
So I'll share some wisdom here, I guess. And I think I shared it at that little table, Spencer, so you probably already know it, but leadcruncher.com has really good probate and successor information. And it's I want to say it's $100 a month plus you get a certain number of credits for the $100, but then anything above your credit limit, you can add on. So let's say you have 5,000 records you want to download, it might cost you an extra $200 or $300. I don't know what the numbers are, but if you're in a smaller county, that list by itself could be huge. So they somehow have access to that data and they format it in a meaningful way. And then you just use the same process. You upload into Prop, you download it, scrub it, do that same process. But
yeah,
I mean, I've got probably 8,000 or 9,000 leads, in my list from just the probate and successor data.
All right, Spencer, we're going to push this out to be aired in 4 to 6 weeks, so I can jump on this before anybody else in this market hears about it.
Actually, we're just going to delete that whole part.
That's right. We're just going to say we're just going to blank it out.
Listen, and here's the thing: is I don't share this with people in my market because I only have 500,000. I'm at small market. I would argue I've probably mailed every single motivated seller multiple times. I don't want my competition to do it too.
No, I don't blame you.
Right?
But you have a great point though, Josh. The links that you're going through to come up with a scoring system and to say, hey, they've got to have 2 or 3 motivators on there. This is what separates amateurs from the pros. Is the willingness to do whatever it takes to get that list, because it's your business, right? It's your livelihood. You're not. It's not a hobby. It's not something you're trying to do. It's I have to provide my acquisitions people with leads, and I don't want them wasting their time. So I want leads that are going to matter, leads that are going to count, because otherwise I'm going to pay them for nothing. And so great points. And
one more thing on that topic, I'll say, to Spencer's point, you're niching down, you're finding actual motivated sellers. We talked about wholesalers, before we got on the air, and we're kind of discussing that. I'll be sitting in church with people that I know have nice houses, not a ton of equity probably. They're like, Adam, why are your people calling me every week? I'm like, it's not my people. They're like, people are calling me asking if I want to sell my house. I'm like, listen, this is just wholesalers. They have run out of data, and they're anybody with a pulse. They are sending out calls to, and I'm sure wasting a ton of time and money. Sure, you're going to get lucky if you call enough people, but all that to say, there are just an influx of people, especially in Birmingham, calling anybody and everybody. They could have just bought the house. They're calling them asking if they want to sell it, which makes us look bad when we're trying to only target motivated sellers, and it gives everybody a bad name,
Absolutely.
And you waste a lot of time doing it. But
yeah, and that's the nice thing about mail, I've tried pay-per-click, TV, radio, billboard, everything. I know that when our phones ring, I've chosen that seller.
Yep. Yep.
right? Like the seller can only call the phone number on that mailer if I've chosen them to call me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're pre-qualifying every person who calls your line,
Yep.
right? So then what does your acquisition team feel like when only good people are calling them that are qualified to sell you a house?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh my God, this is amazing. They work less, they're less stressed, there's less leads to follow up with in the database. And if the lists are done right, they're motivated. So whether they sell now or 90 days or 6 months, the likelihood of that person selling is pretty high. Because like, here's an example is like, I think I showed during my little presentation, Spencer at the table, it's like, there's, someone had a score of 4. It was like the house was inherited, pre-foreclosure, vacant, and failed listing. Do you think that person's going to sell soon? Yeah,
Exactly.
They've already tried and failed. So when you call, you're a hero swooping in to come and save the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you go for. Like the person that you're next to at church, I don't want to buy their house. I want to buy the person who needs to sell. I mean, I can't tell you how many times it's like you're sitting at the closing table and the seller's crying, thanking you for getting them out of this situation, like putting money in their pocket, avoiding that foreclosure. Like, I mean, you can really make a difference if you hit the right people and help them.
And that's what people don't see. People think, oh, real estate investors, they're just trying to prey on the innocent. And I'm like, you didn't see this lady's house that had dead cats behind her couches because she had so much stuff in the house. She thought her cats ran away, like just terrible situations. But one more thing I'll ask you as far as the marketing goes, like in my market, I send out direct mail every month. I'll send targeted, and then I'll send just a separate postcard with a different company just to hit a zip code of those people that are not on any list that just to catch some, not a great response rate, but if I get a deal from it, it's typically a good one. So all that to say, I'll show up to a house and there will be 50 postcards in a file or on a table, and what makes them call you, we don't know, but just the right time. Also, I'll show up and there'll be 5 or 6 other guys that I know, and I'm like, hey, Josh, we had on the podcast. Hey, what? Everybody shows up and they're like, well, this is great. Now we're all going to be bidding against each other. Does that happen in the market you're in? Or because even with niche lists, other people could niche it down like you are. Yeah. Even if they don't niche it as far as you do, people are bound to get mail from other people. Does that happen a lot in your market, or have you just found a little niche market that?
No, it does. Like it definitely does. And I think the laws changing have helped us in that regard, where only the people who can continue to flip are doing that.
Yeah.
There are people who have gone and gotten licensed. So it happens probably more than I like to accept, like I'm competitive by nature, and there's a part of me that still sees wholesalers posting on Facebook, and you're supposed to follow the same rules a realtor does, like your license number, your brokerage, all of the rules that you're supposed to follow, and they don't. So the ruthless side of me is like, well, I want to report you.
Yeah.
Like I want to get you out of my market, get you charged with whatever they charge, and like squeeze you out. Like if you're not following the rules and I have to, then I'm going to make you follow the rules. So like I want to do that, but I don't, because I'm like, all right, well, karma, I'm doing well enough. And like, if they have to cheat to win, then,
well, they can cheat and you're still winning. So that means 100%. Something too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do have it, not a ton, I would say. And like I kind of have gotten to the point where like, I want to own my backyard. Like I've looked at like, do I do virtual wholesaling? Do I branch out to other markets? Like I love the market that I'm in because we're so established. We've been there for 6 or 7 years now, heavy. And we close deals, even when we were wholesaling. If a buyer backed out, we still closed because we gave our word that we were going to buy that house. And I've lost money because of it. Like that's just the reality of what we do. And like having that reputation of closing matters. And I think that's something we point out in that sales appointment is like, hey, you could absolutely take their offer. Are they going to buy it? can they show you a track record of buying? You know, how many deals have they closed in the last month? How many have they canceled? What are their reviews like? Like we have good reviews. We do have a track record of closing. We have title companies and attorneys that recommend us. In fact, one of my favorite stories ever, I got a call randomly from this person that I didn't advertise to. And they're like, hey, is this Josh? I'm like, yeah. Like thinking, oh, great. What is this about? Person's like, oh, I got your number from Bill Eck. I'm like, who the heck is Bill Eck? You know, like no idea who this person is. So I'm on the phone and I Google him. He's the freaking code enforcement officer.
Wow.
Giving out my phone number because he likes the work that we do on properties that we've bought.
Nice.
He sees that we're improving the community and he's giving out my phone number, right? Like explain that to a seller and it's like, listen, we do so well and take such good care of our sellers that the code enforcement is giving our phone number.
That's a fantastic recommendation. And then if you're able if you're able to show them, hey, here are before and after pictures of houses that we've renovated. This is what we want to do with your property.
And
I'll
we also offer the sellers to walk through the property once we've remodeled it.
Oh, that's
which
great.
They love.
That's great.
You know, especially if it's inherited. You know, the inherited list, anytime they have to sell a house, there's some like tender feelings, you know, it was the mom's house, dad's house, whatever. If we can renovate that house and allow them to come and walk through it, it's like magic. You know, they love it. They love what we've done. It makes a huge difference for them.
I've done that 2 or 3 times, and I was going to buy it, you know, like you said, you buy it and then you figure out what you're going to do with it after. I was going to buy it, and then, you know, we're at the closing table and they're like, you know, maybe I was just going to take it, clean it up and let another flipper, you know, take it and make a little bit of money on the front end. And they're like, yeah, we would just really love to walk through this because we grew up in this house and, you know, we'd really love to see your work. And I'm like, crap, now I got to flip it because I'm like, I'm not going to tell these people I'm going to do it. And then I'm not, you know, so like, you know, I'd keep them in the process. And then, like you said, they come back. I can't believe this is the same house. You know, like it's amazing to see,
magic.
even though I necessarily didn't want to flip, I still made money with it, whatever. But yeah, stuff like that definitely goes a long way. And last thing I'll tell you, I kept having people, I don't know if this happens in your market, they would call me. Most of the time it's the older crowd who's just kind of got this, I don't know what kind of mentality they have, but they're like, or are you certified by the Better Business Bureau? For years, I wasn't. And I'm like, no. And they were like, okay, we're only dealing with somebody that's certified by the BBB. And they would hang up. Okay, so that happened like 3 or 4 times. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go get accredited by the Better Business Bureau. I'm going to have everything. I'm going to have it in a packet when I go. I'm going to give it to them. Like Spencer was saying, it shows houses I've done. It shows my certification for the BBB. And like now, that kind of sets you apart because when I go on an appointment, I'll say, listen, if they're not certified by the Better Business Bureau, you might want to rethink about dealing with them, you know, because there's not too many people. And I'm like, I'm not specifically saying don't go with John, you know, Smith over here, but if they're not certified, you can look online at my credentials. Maybe they're not, you know. Same thing with earnest money. Like, hey, look, if they're not willing to put down $2,500 earnest money, they're not serious about buying this house. Don't let them put down $10 or $100. That's a telltale sign they're a wholesaler, you know. So I'm not calling anybody out, but I am saying, listen, this is what to look out for, and I'm legit, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. That seller education is huge.
Yeah.
What was that? I haven't gotten with the Better Business Bureau. What's that process like?
It's not bad at all. It's like, it's like $250 to $300 a year. And you know,
and that essentially gets you a A+ rating because it is a racket.
Yeah, exactly. It's you're an accredited by the Better Business Bureau, and they give you, you know, like you said, you got an A+. It's like $300 a year. I would definitely suggest you do it because I mean, I've gotten 2 or 3 deals just from saying, hey, you can go right now and check.
Yeah, and you throw that on a mailer?
Yeah.
On a mailer, on your website, anything.
You put the logo up there on the BBB on there. I mean, it gives instant credibility. People could do it, obviously, that don't have it, but, you know.
And you know what? A lot of that is that older crowd.
Yeah.
They love the BBB.
That's where they love it.
They
love it. 100%.
And, man, that's smart.
You need to try it. You need to do it for sure.
Well, Josh, this has been fantastic. Last thing I want to ask you before we hop off, just give us a brief snapshot of your business today. So we've heard about kind of the story, the journey. We've talked about some good marketing strategies. Tell us, you know, what do you like? How many deals are you doing? I think we've kind of established you're flipping most of these deals. So give us a quick snapshot of your business.
Yeah. So I think right now at any point in the process, we have 15 deals going. I think currently we have 15 or 16 right now. So that's various stages of flips. So whether on the market, currently being remodeled, under contract to sell, under contract to buy. That's kind of what we're doing. I think we'll hit probably 50 deals this year. Last year we did 73, but that was, a lot of wholesaling. So I think 50 is pretty good. And I think our average spread will hit around 40,000. So nice. I think we'll gross profit around 2 mil. Currently my ROAS on direct mail is like 10.5x.
That's fantastic.
So pretty good numbers. So I think we're spending, 15 to 20,000 a month on mail with, 10x ROAS.
And how many people do you have on your team?
So it's me, an acquisition manager, an operations manager. And then I have like multiple like contracting crews, but those are subcontracted. So they're not really in my team. So 3 people would be on payroll.
Yeah. So you're running pretty lean, which is great.
Very lean. That's how I like it.
That's right.
We're killers, all A players. Like that's, if there's one like piece of like massive advice, I had an operations manager leave because she had to like take care of her kids for summer or whatever. So it kind of left me in a pinch. And I knew someone from property management who was a maintenance coordinator and was fantastic. And so I ended up hiring this other girl who had some like operations management experience, not in real estate. And she's like going through training and she's like, "What's sheetrock?" And I was just like, "Oh no." Like
huge mistake.
And so it was terrible. And so I'm like, you know what? I need to hire someone who's better at this than I am. And so I circled back to the person in property management doing that like maintenance coordination. I kid you not, I've never slept better. She is so on point and handles things at a way higher level than I can. So like the thing I've really learned this year is like hire a professional in that role. No. Like you hear about it, whatever, but like she's so much better at it than I am that there's no question. And then same with my acquisition manager. He was a good salesperson. And then I trained him for a year and I was better than he was. And I think now that that's his only focus, he's a lot better than I am. And he's just a dog. Like he'll be on the phones for 14 hours a day, hammering the phones because he knows they're all good leads. And so it's, the key thing is like hire people who are better at the role than you are and have them teach you things.
It makes your life so much better when you have A players. And it's just like, again, to your point, you sleep better. Everything's better. It's just, yeah.
Well, real quick, if you don't mind, what do you pay your acquisition? How do you pay your acquisition guy? Just in a 10,000 foot view. You don't have to say specifics, but like I've got a cold caller.
I'll give you specifics, man. I'm open.
Okay,
20% of gross profit on the deal.
Any other standard like base pay?
$3K a month, base pay plus 20%. So I pay well, but I pay for performance.
And then he lives in the market.
PA.
Yeah, he lives in PA.
Gotcha. PA, boots on the ground.
Yep.
Operations manager is out of the state as well. So she manages virtually. We've gotten lucky with good contractors. We've gotten lucky with like some good vendors in terms of like our handymen, that sort of thing. Cost of labor there is cheaper, so that helps. But nailed it with my acquisition manager. Like he's an absolute stud, super loyal, super humble, works his ass off.
Nice.
Best hire for sure.
That's great.
Awesome.
Well, Josh, man, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Are you going back out to Dallas anytime soon for Investor Fuel?
Not for the Investor Fuel Live.
Not for the live.
I spoke at last year's, and then I think I have something coming up for that one. But it's a fun event. Like there's a lot of newer folks there that are good. But yeah, I don't think I'll hit that one.
All right. Well, maybe I'll see you down the road at another conference, at another Investor Fuel Mastermind this year.
Well, and I may hit you up for some like new age property management techniques and operations guidance.
Good. Yeah. We'll reach out. I'll put you in touch with anybody in our operations that can help you out. Listen, we're an open book. We love helping folks out.
I love it. Awesome.
All right, Josh.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Josh.
And everybody,
thanks, guys.
We'll be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast.